Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Roll Up and Roll Out, where we chat with business owners that may or may not have their GEDs, but every single one of them knows how to get shit done. Today, we're on with Nathan Bruin. I'm going to introduce him with this company that he's going to be rolling out here, which is Holy Smokes Cannabis. Nathan, give me a little bit of background and context on your life and what's kind of led you down this path.
Yeah, I'll do my best to keep it under 60 seconds, but I think context is good. My first job was a paper route when I was 12. I was saving up for a camp I wanted to go to. My parents actually were able to afford to send me to a private school, but we couldn't afford really anything else. So I went to school with a lot of kids who had a lot more money than us. And everyone always had the new bike, and I started to learn what the phrase "we can't afford it" meant, and I didn't like that phrase, and I didn't understand why my parents didn't like big houses and nice cars. I said, why do my parents not like? Why do they like these little 1990 Geo Prisms, and why is our house the size of my buddy's living room? So that, like, early on, I just started to understand the concept of money, and so I got odd jobs, bussing tables, washing dishes at some local restaurants in Bloomington where I grew up. And then, funny enough, a friend of mine in high school, I walked into a party once, and he was selling cannabis, and I saw this pile of money he was counting, and I saw what people were giving him, and the tiny little scraps he was giving them for exchange for their cash, and I was just like, that seems like it makes a lot more money than washing dishes for, at the time, 14, 14, 20 an hour, after my first raise. I got this introduction to money. I was lucky enough to get a good education. I went to the University of Minnesota, and I actually went to school for biology with intentions of some form of medical school. And I had an opportunity to run a painting business through a company that actually I think is going through a little bit of a revival right now, but they were called College Pro Painters, and they would recruit students and basically teach them how to run a business. And I couldn't believe it. I talked to a friend, ironically, while having a cannabis session, and he said, I have to leave. Where? And I said, where are you going? He said, I have to go on an estimate. I'm like, what do you mean you have to go on an estimate? And he's like, oh, I run a painting business. And I was like, how do you run a painting business? You're 20. And he's like, oh, this company, like, they teach you and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, there's a company that trusts you with a painting business? Like, I got to figure this out. So, like, long story short, I ran a business that summer. It was sophomore summer at the U, and loved it. I didn't make a dime, but I absolutely loved it. I was in charge of my own schedule. I got to go do sales. They did a great job of teaching you interview skills and selling, and lots of door knocking. If anyone's in sales, I think anyone who's in sales should have to do door knocking at some point. And then I kept doing that. I finished school, but I hated school, and I loved running a business in the summers, and I also liked not doing too much work in the winters. So every year we made a little bit more money, and then 7 years into that, actually, so I continued to do it out of school. I got my contractor's license, and just kind of a natural evolution to the trades, and then I ran that is a sort of a handyman remodeling business for 10 years, and then just recently, last October, sold it, and now I'm kind of on to some of my bigger passions. One of them being a cannabis store in Richfield, Minnesota, that we hope to open hopefully early April here.
Yeah. I think there are a couple of really cool little gems that you kind of dropped in that initial bit that you were kind of talking about. One of those is the door-to-door knocking, whether that's business to consumer or business to business. I actually sold Aflac insurance through college.
It's a great job. It's a great job.
Literally, it was a good deal, but like, I did not take advantage of the overall situation. Like, literally, for me, it was like, okay, well, I guess this week we're getting low on money, so I need to go out and knock some doors, sell some stuff, register some people, so I have beer money and party money or whatever. And so that's kind of how I used it. But it was definitely like an intro into sales for me that has done a lot of good for me down the road. But yeah, door knocking is tough. So, what kind of where you're at right now, right? As you exited a company. Like what was that experience like from an owner standpoint? Something that you had kind of taken and built to now, okay, now it's somebody else's baby, and now I'm off. Like, what did that transition process look like for you?
Yeah, I'm still going through it. I still wake up and I'm just like, oh, the material's on the job site. So it's after doing something, anything for 10 years, it my nervous system is settling down a little bit because anybody who's run a business understands just sort of the highs and lows. And I think entrepreneurs probably have some sort of, I don't know, masochist gene where like we like torturing ourselves a little bit with work and stress. It's still happening. Is the short answer. The transition's still happening. Just like anything, and like every year in the business, there's a lot of things I would have done differently through the sale. There's fine print in the contract that's coming back to bite me, not in a huge way, but just getting nickled and dimed on certain things, and by no fault of anyone but my own. So I learned a lot about, like, after going through that process, I do feel like I could take my other trades business and we could do that quicker if we had the right purpose in mind. I'm a little all over the board here, but I would say, like, emotionally, still going through it for sure. And there's Mondays I wake up and I'm like, I don't have to do anything today. Again, I'm working on the cannabis stuff, and that's got its whole other set of challenges. But I've always wanted to own a store of some kind, and so it's fun. And in that business, in that world, people, I'm not in people's homes. They're buying a product that's usually pretty guaranteed, and usually typically not brought back for refunds. And that's not always the case in trades businesses, because people have their expectations and then we have what we can deliver, and sometimes we don't do a great job of aligning those two in that world. So I do think, like, alongside, I've never run a restaurant, but I have friends who run restaurants, and the margins are razor thin. And I think a competing business in terms of difficulty would be the trades, because you are delivering a service, and unless you're the guy doing all of the work, you're managing all sorts of personalities, most of which are not educated people. And that's great, because some of the best people I've met and still know are tradespeople, but they don't have sort of this white collar mindset or like corporate mindset. Whereas, if you're a business person, there's ways of doing things, and that just doesn't work in the trades. Like, you just have to figure out how to deal with Randy, who says he's going to be there at 9 and never shows up, before 9:30. And that's how it is. And so managing relationships like that. So short answer, still happening. It feels good. I didn't exit. I didn't sell it for so much money that I never have to work again. And I would, even if I didn't, I still would, because I like business and I like networking. But it's definitely new, and there's definitely things I would do differently if I did it again. But it's a great experience, and if I did do it again, I have a lot of knowledge to use to make it more profitable and just a better deal for everyone.
Well, some of the best lessons I think we learn in life are lessons that are learned sometimes on our own, where they can be a little bit more painful, right? Because I've had people, and I've been doing our service stuff enough now, where like people will only take in whatever they're capable of handling that day, whatever their bandwidth allows them to, right? So like, you could have had somebody that could have come in and shown you, hey, like, if you do these like 7 things, you can exit this company for 10x more. But I guarantee you, as I've talked to other owners that have kind of exited in similar fashions, not for like tons and tons of money, but good money. They're like, I could have made more money by consulting somebody, but there was no room in my headspace for me to bring in somebody, because I never would have implemented what they told me anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, that is 100% true. And I do think I gave myself some advantages by just digesting a lot of really good I mean, there's so much free information about this stuff out there, probably too much, but just some really good authors like Ray Dalio, just to your point of, like, you have to learn stuff and feel pain. Like, he talks about that. He ties evolution to economics all the time, and it's true. And like you said, I think I was ready to sell. And even if someone said, hey, you can wait 2 more years and do these things and sell it for twice as much, I don't think I would have taken them up on it. Like, I was emotionally burnt out and I was ready to go, and it was a good deal, and I get to focus on stuff that really energizes me. So, but yeah, to your point, you definitely got to feel. I definitely had to feel some pain, and they're good, because I won't forget. I
Most
assure
people
you.
do.
Yeah.
Most people do. I mean, working in the financial consulting space and kind of doing what we do, it's actually crazy to me over the last 3.5 years that I've been doing this, the amount of people that will come to us are in a position where we can actually do something at that time to help them, it's going to take a little bit of work, and then they just disappear, and they come back 6 months later, and they're like, we need your immediate help. We've gotten into a really, really bad situation. I'm just sitting here going like, why, and how did this happen? Like, we had the path out of this to avoid all of this. But sometimes it literally is. I just need to go get my feet held to the fire and feel the burn for a little bit. And then if you're like me, which most entrepreneurs are, we've probably got to go put our feet in the fire like 5 or 6 times before we're finally like, oh, like this actually probably shouldn't do this anymore.
Yeah, I have to bang my head on the garage like 3 times before I realize, okay, just open it all the way. You don't need to just to take out the trash. You don't need to open it halfway. Just let it go up, man.
Yep. A mentor of mine made one of the funniest comments. He's like, people will slam their head against the metal wall over and over again, only to look up and realize there's a wide open door, like right to the right of them. Like, oh, there's a door there. I could have just went through that.
I will check for doors next time because that hurt.
So you run multiple companies. Obviously, you've got another company kind of coming up and getting initiated, started. Like, what are some of the things that because a lot of the people that listen to our show, they have multiple businesses as well, right? Some of them are hobbies, some of them are their main income level generating. Like for you, trying to start another business from scratch, running your current company, like what are some of the things that you kind of have found allow you to compartmentalize each business so that you're not carrying the stresses of one business into another?
Yeah.
Or maybe you haven't found that yet. I don't know.
I have found tools that ease the pain. I would never claim to be an expert on it, but when I share stuff on platforms like this, I do my best to either stick to personal experience, stuff that's actually worked for me, or stuff that really smart people smarter than me have written in books that say do this. I think the best thing that I think I really started taking seriously maybe around the age of 28, that sticks in my head a lot. I started reading a lot of books. One of the books I read that sort of started that journey was a book called Ultimate Sales Machine by Chet Holmes. He actually has a chapter on priority management in there, and it's the shortest chapter. And his whole idea is priority. There's so many productivity tools out there and these notebooks you can buy. And I always come back to a pen and paper. And for whatever reason, there's science that backs the idea that writing something down really ingrains it in your psyche. But for whatever reason, I always come back to that, and I always try to get stuff out of my head and onto paper. And I think that if there was one thing I told anybody to do, or maybe 2, it'd be write it down. And then again, I mentioned Ray Dalio earlier, but he's a big transcendental meditation guy. I'm sure I have some form of undiagnosed ADHD, and that has been a practice. And it's not for anyone who doesn't know what that is, it's not associated with any specific religion. It's just a way of being and sort of harnessing focus. So those 2 things have been really helpful. And then I think the other big step, I remember a friend of mine who owns a painting company who's actually going through the process of a sale. You should connect with him, Paul. But I called him once when I was really stressed out, and his advice to me was, you should just take a month off the business. You have this guy. I had a sort of a general manager type in a role, but I was still very involved. He said, you should just let him handle it and see what happens. And I was to a point where there wasn't another reality that really seemed acceptable to me. Like I was burnt out. And it's the best thing I did because it forced him to grow, and it showed me that I can trust people with my business. So what I would say is, if you're a one person show, hiring another person who's really competent and capable can make your life a lot easier, and then getting really good at setting goals with them. And then the other piece of that is, if you are a one person show, like really good partners. I've been through partnerships. I actually went through a partnership 2 years ago that fell apart and ruined a friendship. Because somebody always does more work, unless there's a quality or a characteristic in that person that you don't have or that you haven't developed yet. Finding good partnerships where you really, it's true, it's cliche, but it's true synergy, where your strengths perfectly or really close to perfectly complement their weaknesses. That's a game changer. Like with the cannabis store, I have a partner who's run dispensaries in Washington, and I have the connections here, but I know I'm splitting profit, but for what I know it would take to get, I don't want to go through another 10 years of building a trades business thinking I need to do everything. So those would be I think those were three things. So yeah, writing stuff down, even if it's just scribbles on a paper. Like I said, big transcendental meditation fan. And then surrounding yourself with really good people that's my triad, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I get to work with a lot of different business owners at a lot of different sizes. Some of them are just breaking 250,000. Some of them are. I've got one that just exited for 90 million. Right. Like, and as you kind of look at the different mindsets and stages and stuff that people go through, a lot of the similarities is the ones that are successful have figured out that they are never going to be the ones that are going to scale their company. It's going to be people or better processes or partnerships or whatever that is, right? And so they figure out very quickly how to leverage human equity to get where they want to go. I was actually just talking to the guy that sold for 90 million. I'm like, how do you keep such a high level of executives on hand? Because it's like every time you turn something up, you're like, it's almost like you've got somebody hired within days. And he's like, I go out and I meet people. If there's somebody that's got a COO, CFO, CEO, whatever executive title they have at an event, I make friends with them and I get to know them. And then if I like their personality, how they operate, how they think, they're in my notebook. Then whenever that position comes in, I've got my notebook literally on me that I can just go through and start making connections with people. And that's really kind of one of those things where I'm like, that's such a good skill for anybody to have. A private money investor that I talk to, they interview people that want to come in and be lenders. And he goes, the interview isn't about the questions. He goes, I watch them. We go to a restaurant. We go to a grocery store. We go to these places. Do they hold the door for the people behind them? Are they flirting and overly gracious with the staff? Or are they friendly and joking and open and like, what just kind of a person are they in their environment? He goes, that's how we make our decisions off of who we want to partner with or not, is like literally like, are you just a decent human being or are you kind of just cruddy, self-focused, all that kind of stuff. So, but I don't know, maybe you've found that with, people you've hired and brought on. Have you found that just the way somebody is sometimes trumps the skill set?
Yeah. And there's right. Like you have to have some level of acumen to do the job. I would take, if we're on a scale of, 0 to 10, 0 no acumen, and 10 like an expert, I would take a 6 acumen, 10 character over a 10 acumen, 8 character, like all day long, because at the end of the day, they're the ones touching your customers, your other employees. Yeah, I think I I've come up with all sorts of personality tests that I've given people. We've always joked too. We wish we could give customers personality tests before we would take deposits on their construction projects. But yeah, understanding how people work, but those intangibles are hard. And I've learned the hard way. I've hired people who are like, this guy's great on paper. I'm thinking of an individual specifically, but I remember like a third conference call I had with one of my coaches, the guy like freaked out and yelled at him. And right then and there, I should have known, like, I got to let this guy go. But again, with the feet to the fire, like, and he created a lot of damage before he left. So 100% all day long. Especially after 10 years of running that business, I have the second, and there's also a balance between, is it just that I don't like this person, or is it that they're not a good person? Because there's often personalities that are really good people. I move fast, and sometimes I might need somebody who moves slower, and it might bother the hell out of me. But if they're a good person and they're, nice to animals, I used to bring my dogs into interviews after I got burned a couple times. Not that you have to like dogs, but just how they are is everything. And yeah, if they have some level of acumen, but they're a really good person, it just shows character. And it's like, I'd rather somebody they talk about the Marines who make it. It's never the big, strong, tattooed guys. It's the, it's the little skinny guys who don't give up. And yeah, 100% couldn't agree more. Finding those people. And I think that's great. Like if you don't have time to go out to dinner with them, it's tough to do in an interview. So take the time to take them out. Yeah. If you get a chance, for sure.
Learning to understand the unspoken. Right. I mean, that's really, having interviewed a bunch of people as I was, a general manager for a dealership and sales executive for a larger company, and just the amount of people that I've interviewed, there's telltale signs. I'm also gifted with good intuition. I'm fairly easy. It's fairly easy for me to read people fairly quickly as like, is this somebody I really want to work with, or is there something that's actually not being said that I need to ask more questions around or pay more attention to? Things like that. But yeah, it's the reality of being an owner is you're going to make decisions emotionally a lot of times. You're going to make decisions out of stress. And sometimes those decisions are literally like, you should have fired this person like 6 months ago, but just out of necessity and out of stress of like trying to find a replacement, you left them on. But if there's one thing I've learned is that saying like hire slow, fire fast is one of the most accurate, true sayings that I've found in business, and more people need to adhere to that. So, it's too bad we have to learn that lesson hard, and then usually those cause problems too down the road. So for sure.
Yeah.
But I like to leave my door open at my office when I'm on interviews with potential clients, and my kids come in and out. They'll ask me questions, and I just like to see how people react to that.
Yeah, like, what is this guy doing? Is he not like, this isn't professional? Why isn't he show? Yeah, exactly. Or like, and sometimes they won't say it, but their face will, or they break eye contact, or you can tell they're doing something. I was interviewing someone for some part-time position like a week ago, and you can just, even on the phone, you can tell it's like, okay, you're doing something else right now, right? Like, I don't have your full attention, which isn't necessarily a disqualifier, but picking up on those nuances can be challenging. It is an art, but sometimes, yeah, like you said, sometimes you just gotta kind of go through it to learn that stuff, for sure.
For sure. No, man. I know you've got the new company, that's releasing, and I know that's kind of, from just kind of listening to your conversation, and that's your kind of hobby. That's your excitement right now. Like, the last couple minutes here, like, walk me through kind of like that process of like deciding, hey, this is an industry I want to go into, knowing that it's still a pretty new industry in terms of legalities, what's going to happen in the future, what happens, like, it's not a federally recognized thing totally yet. So there's restrictions. So like, just kind of walk me through that process of like, hey, I want to go dive into like this. It's a cool industry, but it's also not as easy as I think a lot of people think it is.
Yeah, I mean, I got lucky, if you will, by kind of going through the stuff I went through, 12 years ago now. And so I feel like I'd be doing a disservice not getting these licenses. And I have seen this play out in a few other states. They can be very profitable, and you read about cannabis business going out of business all the time. And I think, again, that's where partnership comes in big time. It is something I wake up and I get excited about and I work on. It's also not the only thing I work on for those reasons. And even if it wasn't a federally, even if it wasn't a federally illegal thing still, I think I'd still want to be diversified, just like classic economics. And so, we're not walking away from our roofing and exterior company. We're driving that. I'm definitely putting more focus on cannabis right now, but I think it's always good to have a couple things in the fire, and like networking, because of how much focus and how I've done right by people over the last 10 years. If this all blew up in my face, I have a great partner at home too, which helps a lot. But if this all blew up in my face, I could make 5 phone calls and I could go get a job that I could support my family on until I figure out what I want to do. But yeah, it's risky, it's scary, it's fun. I don't think the Fed wants to, go in and raid all these stores. Like, there's a lot of taxes will probably go up. We'll probably have to pay a little bit more tax to the feds at some point, but you got to plan for that in the business. Like, you got to build it. You got to build it like there's 10% in expenses that you're just not going to see, and then also just like not putting, balancing really hard focus with not putting all your eggs in one basket. Because I'm definitely going all in, but like you said, anything can happen, and I do believe in the industry, though. I'm excited about it, and I think there's a lot of ancillary income that can come from these businesses, and people will be selling shovels whenever there's a gold rush. So figuring out what the shovels are and just getting involved in the community. I don't think it's going away. There's no sign in the last 10 years that the industry's going away, and AI is not going to do much other than, I think, help our businesses grow and be more efficient.
Yep. No, I agree with that. AI is a whole other rabbit hole you can go down. I think people they're in the AI craze, and so it's out there everywhere, right? But at the end of the day, what I always tell people is until AI can fully replace human empathy and the ability to read body language, facial expressions, have some sympathies, really be able to actually like be a human. Uh, if that's ever a skill that's caused as a major skill set in your company, you're never going to get replaced, right? Until that changes. So,
Yeah.
Man, I appreciate your time.
Yeah. Thanks.
This is a national podcast. So, some listeners will be local, but like, with your new company coming up, where is that going to be located? How can people find details on that?
Yeah. So we are technically not licensed yet. We have to have the state come in and do like a final inspection before we get our official license. So I'm not releasing media or Instagram right now. You will be able to find us, Holy Smokes Cannabis. You might find some that's not in Minnesota. That's not us. But until I have a physical license, which again, April 10th is our target for that inspection, I don't want to drive any traffic. But I'd love to come back on and maybe in 6 months we can talk again, and I can plug my business a little bit.
For sure. No, man, I appreciate you. I appreciate you taking time out of your day to pop on the show. It's nice learning about you and your companies. It's always good to learn about other people.
Yeah. Nice to meet you too, Paul. Let's chat offline sometime too.
Sounds good. We will do that. For all the listeners, please like and subscribe. Follow us on Apple, Spotify. Share these podcasts. Again, I love to share messages. Everybody's got a story. You may not recognize it yet, but you have a story for a purpose. Get out there and share it, and that's what Roll Up and Roll Out is about. Until next episode, we'll see you guys all later.